I'm so excited to welcome back the Direction Not Perfection ADHD dietitian, Chelsea Grompone. And we are in the middle of an ADHD series. And this is kind of like where Chelsea and I had started this part one with the idea that when we have ADHD, there might need to be this tool bag, a different tool bag than what somebody else might experience to get the desired results in the nutrition and fitness space, right? And so I had asked you at the end of our first part this question of if you could wrap your arms around our community and kind of what's one thing that you would highlight, you hope and pray that they heard out of you, out of that interview. And you had the most beautiful response, Chelsea. You had said that to lean into this community of people who nourish your brain, nourish your ADHD brain versus trying to change it. And I was like, oof, that's so good. And then my first question back to you today is what are the dangers if you're not in a community like that? What can happen when somebody is always trying to change our brain? All right, I'll shush, you go.
No. Oh, I love that. That's an excellent question. I think a lot of people don't realize with ADHD, it's strongly correlated also with depression and anxiety. And a lot of that tends to feed off of what we call masking, which is where we are surrounded by individuals that are neurotypical and we see their behavior and we naturally kind of mirror that behavior. So with that, you might think like a first date. You're going out, he might order his steak and fries, and you think, okay, well, I'm going to get steak and fries. So when you do that, you lack the ability to then determine what you truly like or don't like because you've kind of just mirrored those around you. And it can be very taxing as well. So it kind of leads to an identity issue, a confidence issue, and just this overwhelming sense of who am I and kind of chasing that identity throughout. So with the masking, when you are surrounded by individuals that are similar, like-minded as you in the sense of neurodivergent, maybe different opinions and things like that, your mask really does come down and you can finally start to see who you are. So when finding that community, I strongly encourage finding it. And that can be through social media. I think that's a great use of the platform. You can go on Instagram. I've also seen various Facebook groups for ADHD and ADHD issues where people kind of just come out and say, like, I've always experienced this challenge. Anyone else feel that? And just having other people say that, oh, yes, that's also a challenge for me is so validating. And then you can start looking for the same answers together.
So you're bringing up so many great points. And stop here for 1 second because with the whole idea of when we are on social media and we're getting the other people who are like me too, that's really comfy. But I have heard some of my people go, all right, I feel understood. I'm seeing other people who are living in the same space, but I don't know if I'm necessarily like reaching answers. I'm like kind of stuck at we all understand each other, but now what?
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point because that's so true is that we're all hitting this and we have to see, okay, well, if that's the problem, what is the solution? And a lot of those solutions, it's not easy, right? Like last time we were talking about the toolbox and we talked about stimulants, how that's part of the toolbox, but it's not the whole thing. And there's a lot of people that look for solutions outside of that. And that goes for every single solution. What you have in your toolbox might be different than what I have in mine, but seeing what other people are using is a great start point. So I know that there's a lot of individuals like myself that are promoting various activities and routine to kind of jump in because you really do have to kind of shift your whole day into a new experience. Because if you've only felt one way and you've figured out all of the problems, there's definitely opportunity for change. And that's scary, especially I think for the ADHD community, because we don't do well with transition and change. And we do need a lot of repetition and time to get into a flow of a new routine. But when we do it, though, that's where we can start really feeling the change.
Okay. Yeah, I'm writing some of your buzzwords down here because I'm liking the repetition part, I think is where individuals fall off. And we're talking everybody here
Hmm.
that,
Hmm.
we learn a new skill and we forget that we have to practice it 1,000 times until it's actually going to feel manageable. And that's where, again, everybody has the opportunity to totally fall off and go, I stink at this. I'm never going to get it. Why is this so hard for me? Type of a feeling.
Absolutely. Yeah. And one of the big things with ADHD is that it's a dopamine chasing condition. So we're notoriously low in dopamine, so we're constantly searching. So when we're looking to change that routine, one of the ideal ways to do it is setting small, realistic goals because you're going to hit that first goal and you're going to get that little bit of dopamine. You're like, oh, this feels good. And then you're going to want to keep chasing it, and that's the same thing for anyone. If you set that goal real high and you're not hitting it, you're going to give up. Right. So we need those little successes to get all the way to our goal.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you for pointing that out, highlighting. Can we circle? Can everybody listening write that
Yeah.
down? It's the slow and steady, and it's exactly what
Yes.
society is never teaching us. Instead, we live in a microwave society where we want it now, but that's just
Yeah.
not real. So, and to also not leave this point, you mentioned the identity piece of this, and
Mm.
I was actually supposed to ask you this question, and I almost forgot. I'm I think identity is hard to refine as like my clientele is more 50s, 60s. And so I have some individuals going, it's hard to start learning about myself now at this season of life. And maybe even now menopause is hitting. It's like, if it wasn't already hard before, now let's just throw on some hormonal things and let's throw on some other mood changes and anxiety and whatnot. Like, what's some of your talk around ages and finding identity?
Yeah, that's a really tough conversation because a big part of that is, being able to be vulnerable and getting out and meeting, because a lot of that has to do with socializing and meeting new people a lot of the time to really discover, where you feel comfortable, where you're finding yourself excited, wanting to do more. It's stepping outside of that little world that you've created. But there's so much opportunity out there that really diving in is important. And that's where, again, like the social media is a great start point, but looking within your local community to see what's going on can be great because it could be events at the local library. There tends to be like the walkthroughs at the grocery store where like they'll introduce you to different things. If interested, the church, even if you're not religious, will put together like local activities that could be great to get involved in. So regardless of where you are, there's a good chance something is happening. And it's one of those things that you can go for the first time, be really uninterested, feel really uncomfortable, and maybe we can check that off the list and then move on to the next thing. But no, that's so true is that when you get older, especially if, you've had this whole life where, as women, we talk about like having the home and maybe you brought up a family, you had a very strong role for a very long time. And when you get past that, the empty nest, and you kind of have a lot of time on your hands in retirement, you got to sit back and think like, what can I do to fill this time that I enjoy and that's going to nourish me? And so exploring the options is really, really important.
Yes, thank you again for taking the time to do that because I feel like some people can mask, their whole life where they really never got that opportunity to find themselves. And it makes me sad. It makes me like you and I can be that advocate to move forward and like I don't care how old you are. I don't care if you're 80 and you're self-discovering. Perfect.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know. Yeah.
And there's a lot that individuals can do that isn't, so out of the home because maybe they're not ready for that yet. So it could be about researching various things. There's so many things, whether it be academia, which could be at any age. I think people think that there's a cutoff point, and there absolutely is not. And there's so much opportunity now online or just local schools where you can really dive in and become an expert of your own in something that you really enjoy, which That sounds amazing. You can just get into reading. You can open up a whole world in a novel, which that's a new experience that I've taken on recently, a joy of reading, where I thought for a long time I couldn't. And then I understood my ADHD, and now I know the style of books I can read. So when you find that you do have ADHD, regardless of the age, I think it just promotes an opportunity to do things maybe you thought you couldn't before, but now you can just do it differently.
Love it. Thank you. Oh, so good. Okay. I want to move into, we started to talk about grocery store and more
Mhm.
food type talk last time we were together. And then I already said this last time, but I follow you on social media and I love your reels. They are so real and they speak over that ADHD community so beautifully. So first and foremost, for our listeners who missed our first talk, it was on avoiding common diet and fitness traps with ADHD. It's a couple weeks ago. Feel free to go back and take a listen there because we are going to move on to movement today together. And you had a reel where you had ADHD and movement. And you highlighted some of the awesome things that can come from movement, like decreasing core symptoms, improve executive function, reduce risks for cognitive decline. So, could you chunk through each one of those and describe? Because after I was reading decreased core symptoms, I'm like, I don't know if I totally understand what core symptom you were heading towards
Mhm.
there. Yeah.
Yeah. So the core symptoms of ADHD, that kind of encompasses the lack of concentration or focus on one thing. Um, that's one of our big ones, right? That we feel scattered, distracted. And with regular exercise, it has been seen that, incorporating that in, especially if in the morning, so starting your day out with some good movement, it kind of sets you up to be more streamlined. So it's almost like you have all of this dysregulated energy. And so if you can get out like a good pocket of that, they've actually seen the positive results. So part of that is also that dopamine, right? Because we're dopamine chasing, which is a big piece of that distraction element. That if I'm trying to do a task, but it could be daunting, there's no end in sight, I'm getting distracted. It's because I'm looking for those little pockets of dopamine to get me through. So if we're able to go through that workout, which we know that exercise is going to increase our dopamine levels, then we're going to get that. And it kind of helps us to coast through that next activity, which could be a full day of work. So little things like that. Then you also see the opportunity to break that up during the day, right? So we're not meant to sit at a desk stationary for 8 hours. So breaking that up of, well, I'm going to do 30 minutes on, 10 minutes off, or maybe it's 45 minutes on, 10 minutes off. But getting up, going for a brisk little walk, through, you could just be at your small environment, office, even if you work from home, just getting up, moving, getting your arms going, the stretching, blood flowing, all of that can be beneficial to, again, those core symptoms so we can get us streamlined.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. And then I really do want you to also go into the reduced risk of cognitive decline because I think this is so motivating.
Yeah, I think this is a really great conversation right now, which I love. I think cognition is really taking a step forward in every community, really. And I think a big part of that is that we're more aware of dementia at this point, the various risk factors for it. We also have to think that the baby boomer generation, a lot of them are entering into retirement age and older. And so, with that large population, you're seeing a higher number of those with dementia. And part of that is okay, the numbers are going up because there are more individuals of that age group. But that also presents an opportunity to research a little bit, understand a little bit more, just because there's a bigger pool. And part of that discussion that is, undervalued is the connection of blood flow and heart health. So there's actually such a strong correlation there because one of the forms of dementia is vascular, right? So with vascular dementia, where you have reduced blood flow to the brain, with reduced blood flow, it's reduced oxygen. Reduced oxygen affects cognition. So with extended periods, that's where you'll see an actual dementia. So with that, you have to think about heart health, which has been previously the big conversation, was like heart health, lower disease risk of heart disease, everything. And we've seen that kind of shift over to now, well, we had that gut piece, and now it's kind of over to the brain. So every couple of years, there's like a hot topic, but it's all interconnected. So when we think about the heart, about 20% of each pump is pumping up to the brain. So if we have any heart issues, whether that be, the high cholesterol, hypertension, that's going to affect the ability to properly flow all of that blood through, then you're going to have the same results of that reduced oxygen to the brain and cognitive function. So that's why a lot of the recommendations from a dietary perspective of ADHD also include similar to like the Mediterranean diet or other alternatives that are going to help with the blood flow and be more of like a heart healthy style diet.
Yeah, thank you. You're so wise in this area. And to your point, one topic doesn't go away. It still remains. The heart health is still so important, but the brain. And the piece that I like about talking about this is, when I talk to clients, and I'm sure you're the same way, they're putting in movement, fitness, because it's normally correlated with weight loss, right? And that isn't always a big enough why to get out the door and move. But man, if we could tell somebody there's a 60% less risk of them getting dementia if they actually moved, that government's recommended 4 to 5 times a week for 20 to 30 minutes, like nothing crazy. We're not talking like Chelsea's not telling you to go start training for a marathon. We're talking like just move and cognitive decline reduces. That's motivating.
Yeah. Yeah. And I saw a video recently that I had reposted, and I've gotten a lot of feedback about it, which is kind of on the same loop of movement and getting started. And, a lot of people just say like, well, I just hate it. I don't want to do it. Like I think about it all week because I only do it on Saturday and I can't get myself to do it. And one of the videos I had reposted was someone saying that, they identify as a runner. They love running, but they say that it's not the running that they love. It's that feeling after. And that's a lot of our success. Like you think about like going to school is really hard. I don't like taking a test, but I really like when I get a good grade. So we have to go through these hard periods to have that exhilarating results where something positive has come out. So it's putting in the work to see a result, but it doesn't have to be, I know we talked about last time, like not looking at this scale. We're looking at that feeling of accomplishment when you're done. And it could be those small little pockets. It could be 10 minutes a day and building up and feeling, oh my goodness, when I started, I could only do a 5-minute walk. And now I can do 15 and I feel good. Being able to work within that realm is really fantastic and feeling that success.
Yeah, and isn't it interesting that with school or something, we don't expect to go into school every day and love it. But it's just kind of like expectations are set differently around it. So we just do it. But that is not our expectations around getting in the kitchen and cooking. Like we're supposed to love it. Why? Like, when did that happen? Why?
Right. And that's so true. I think when there's such a barrier to accomplishing something like cooking, if, I don't feel confident in it, I feel like it's daunting, I'm not going to do it. It's like, okay, well, what specifically feels daunting about it? And breaking down those pieces and figuring out solutions to make it a little bit easier and more approachable. And it's the same thing to exercise. I had a client recently, we were talking about the morning, where she just said, I don't feel like myself in the morning. And, because I think we all feel kind of like a gremlin when the alarm goes off, and you're not responsible if you snooze. That wasn't you, it was the gremlin. So we were talking about ways of getting out and getting some movement in before work that felt doable. So we set up, okay, 5 days this week, which is a lot. 5 days this week, no matter what, for 10 minutes, you're either going to go on your Peloton or you're going to go for a walk. And you have that choice. It's up to you. If you feel like you can do the 10-minute ride on the Peloton, like that's the direction. Or if it feels like 10 minutes outside, walking with a little bit of sun, getting that serotonin going, is the direction, then that's what you're going to do. So you have a choice, which I think having a choice it helps a lot. And then we broke down, okay, well, what are the barriers? And she said, well, sometimes I just think about getting on the Peloton and the idea of taking off my sweatpants and putting on shorts. Can't do it, you know? I said, okay, well, let's think about how to make that easier. So like always having the shorts available on the bike is like step one. So you don't have to sleepy, go through the drawer, get them out, find the shoes, prep up the bike. So if that's what you are leaning towards, it's a little bit easier. And that kind of just goes for every task that we have in our life, is providing yourself choice to make it easier of, I don't have to do this. You know,
Yeah.
if this side seems too hard, I can go this direction. And if I choose that direction, what have I done to make it a little bit easier?
Yes, and sometimes a lot bit easier, right? Like, how can we dummy things down to the point where it's almost like we can't fail? And if we haven't gotten to that, and this is where I love your conversation with your client, is it feels like an easy solution when somebody is sitting back and listening to this, they're like, possibly duh. But when we're the person going through that barrier, your client was probably super thankful to be like, huh, thanks for the permission to do that and set up all these different successes that I could have, so that when that decision fatigue is happening in the moment, then you can just pick. It's there. You've already set yourself up for success. So I think people need to get over that thought of like, it's too easy to work. You know, that we
Mm-hmm.
always go, well, if it feels that easy, then surely it's not leading me to success. And it's like the exact opposite.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all of those little successes. That's what you're going to build off of, and you're going to just build up. Same with that runner's mentality. A runner doesn't start at a 10-minute mile, right? They work
Mhm.
up to that and then they work past it. So setting those achievable goals, that's what's going to keep you motivated to get to your big goal.
Yes. Okay, I have to throw this in too. I literally sleep in a sports bra and my workout clothes because the only thing I have in me in the morning is to roll out and just put the
Mm-hmm.
shoes on at the door, because my big thing is I never want to wake people up. It's like my time, and God forbid me searching through a drawer or opening a door or whatever is going to wake up the kids or the dog or the whatever. So to just roll out and sneak out was my barrier of it happens or it doesn't happen. So I love that you brought up the workout clothes piece. It's a big one.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. And I think a lot of what we're discussing has to do with morning routine. And I love that because I think the morning is horrifying for a lot of people. I think that there's a lot of fear around the morning. It tends to be very like stressful, right? Because you have to, if you sleep in, then you have to rush and get ready, and then you have to be out the door. Maybe you have a meeting first thing. You have a lot of like work tasks right then,
Yeah.
and that can be very overwhelming. So a lot of the time, it's a conversation of getting up earlier to exercise before that chaos does not seem achievable at all. And so, one of the other tasks that I like to work on with people is really like setting a new routine for the morning and working to reduce those late mornings. And that can be challenging initially because I think a lot of people they get in the mindset of like, well, I need this sleep. Like I was staying up so late, and so now I have because I was working on this, and this, and then maybe I was up late scrolling. I'm exhausted, so I ended up sleeping in. And that brings us over to the weekends, where I feel like a lot of people really sleep in because they're almost making up for that time that they couldn't during the week. But the later we sleep in on the weekends, the harder it's going to be to get up during the week. So I usually encourage trying to set a realistic time that you can wake up every single day. And because the funny thing about the weekend is that you don't have to stay up, right? So you can get up early, do a bunch of things. And if you have, a lifestyle that warrants it, you could take a nap in the afternoon and kind of recharge a little bit. But getting up, so I will say I get up every morning at 6 or 6:30. And so I do have pets. So, they make sure that I get up at that time. but I've always marked myself as a morning person. And I think it's because I'm so set into that routine. And in doing that, I have a lot of me time before the stressful work period. So I'm not getting up and having that like heart palpitation that I have to run, get in the car, get to work, start everything, because I had all of that time in the morning for me. So I know we were speaking a lot last time about wanting to reduce stress and how that's a big conversation right now. And being able to wake up earlier sounds stressful, but it's going to set you up for a less stressful day, because that tone is going to carry you through all of those stressful meetings, because your energy is going to be here as opposed to starting your day through the roof.
So let's take this back again. Like, okay, so ADHD, as we were saying, with this this whole example, like all just tied together between the
Mhm.
exercise and the decreasing of stress. Like, rewind everything that we just talked about in this episode and how it all fits ADHD benefiting, leaning in, nourishing that piece of your brain.
Mhm. Yeah, because ADHD, a lot of individuals think they can't have routine. And that's where we change the conversation, because their mind flourishes with routine. We want to be able to get up and know what to expect next. And that's a routine. So it just takes time to get into it, and it's really uncomfortable initially. But as you get into the flow of being able to do the same thing each morning, because I always stress a good morning routine and a nighttime routine for sleep hygiene, but starting with those mornings and the regularity of the various tasks for when you're getting up, your movement, eating, and decompressing before starting your work environment, that might be your stress load. That's going to be what's going to be able to get you into that lower stress mode so that you can take in information and properly kind of clarify it and complete it through the day.
Yes. Ah, this is so good. And again, I know we're in ADHD mode here, but this works for the general population as well. So
Mhm.
everybody could take this and run with it. The hard piece about it is oftentimes until you're living it, you don't believe it, or it feels too hard to feel like you'll believe it. Until you're getting all the benefits from it, then that piece of hitting the ground running in the morning with the earlier wake up time starts to feel way more motivating if you can feel the results from it. It's interesting. Do you find with your clients, like they can hear you and go, yeah, 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 I can see how this could benefit me? But the idea of adhering to this type of routine, or like, what are some of your kickbacks or conversations with people that you're going, I hear you, but let's reset this thinking?
Yeah. Is like we said before briefly with starting the morning routine, right? 'Cause there's always going to be resistance to that. Because like we said, you're a gremlin when you're in that little sleepy state. So you're not responsible. So you're going to snooze through and keep going. It's like, okay, well, let's back up. What got you to that point? And we kind of refresh down to the night before. Okay, why did you stay up so late? And it's a lot of people, they do the doom scrolling. And a lot of that has to do with not having that opportunity during the day and kind of making up for lost time. You kind of get lost in it. And so we talked about, okay, well, where did we get lost there? And we're constantly backtracking, because all of the things that they're experiencing in one way or another is very relatable. So I can say that I absolutely understand. I've done that, like no one is completely alone in their experience. One way or another, it's very relatable, or we can be empathetic towards it. It's about how are we going to break these barriers together, because I know the result that you want. So if we get stuck in, oh, well, that's going to be too challenging, I don't want to do that. Okay, well, then you're not going to get here. And that's a hard conversation, right? So thinking about, like we said before, making those small, obtainable goals. Some of them are going to have more barriers than others to get us to the top, but breaking them down together. And it is hard when there's resistance, but at the end of the day, it's not my goal. So however slow we have to be to get there, because we can back it up. If we're not ready for the morning, let's figure out why. And if it's the evening, okay, let's start there. Right. So it's about kind of investigating together where the resistance is and why, and then breaking through those barriers.
Yeah, and this is where again a coach is priceless because that feels super overwhelming to try to figure that out. We can't see our own barriers, our own issues because they're so built in and ingrained in our own routine that until it's highlighted by somebody else, then we go, oh, it's the bedtime that's affecting the next day, whatever. Where in the
Mm-hmm.
moment we feel like it's the morning, but it's really the nighttime routine. And so it's interesting. And if somebody, a listener, is going, I've never experienced really working with somebody before, I can guarantee both Chelsea and I advocate it, highly because do it and then you'll see that's benefits and then you'll never turn back. Yes.
Absolutely.
So your post, I can't let you go without asking these last couple things because this was wonderful. You had said that ladies who feel like their metabolism is broken, and that phrase is my population. There are so many people who are like, my body doesn't work like that anymore. I can't lose weight. I can't build muscle, blah, blah. Where were you going with that thinking?
Yeah, I think it was more discussing the misconception that the metabolism is broken, because I've been seeing that advertised a lot recently. And I understand the thinking behind it, right? Because you're in a body you don't recognize. What worked 25 years ago does not work now. Clearly, something has changed. And you're right, something has changed. But physiologically, it's not necessarily your metabolism, right? And a big part of that is actually muscle mass in general. So as we age, we do lose muscle mass, which is why we've seen so much in the conversation about protein, 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 because we want to retain our lean tissue and we want to build our lean tissue. So we want to make sure that we're hitting enough of a protein intake so that we're not breaking down muscle to get the protein that we need in the body. So it's a naturally occurring process as we age. With decreased muscle mass, that's where you're going to be burning less calories because muscle is what burns more calories. So that's where we're seeing that change. So it's not the metabolism, but it's the makeup of your body. So that's where a lot of the direction would be, okay, well, how are we going to keep the muscle that you have and build some of it back? Yeah. So that's where a lot of that conversation was and just the misunderstanding of it. And it does get really challenging, especially with hormonal changes, pieces like that, routine changes. You kind of have to backtrack and give yourself the patience and just knock yourself on the back a little bit, a little pat, because it's hard freaking work. So to get back in there and to identify that you do need a change and kind of getting back out there and trying new things to get there because what you tried 25 years ago is not working. Mm-hmm. It takes a lot of guts and it really shows that you are prioritizing your health. And I think that's huge.
I absolutely agree. And I just think this is also linking back in with where we started, coming full circle, that exercise has so many benefits. And the building of the muscle mass is a huge other conversation with this, or maintaining of muscle mass that we as women sometimes get guided towards. When health is brought up, it can be like, well, have you tried a fitness app or a fitness logging, food logging, calories? And it's like, sometimes we lose that piece of the conversation that's like, have you been muscle training? Have you been resistance training? Like, this is a huge part of your health journey that will benefit you into your 80s, 90s, extremely so.
And I like talking about that conversation too, because it's so much more than the scale. And I'll keep saying it 100 times, because especially as we age, we think about even bone health, right? And a lot of women don't recognize the significance of resistance training and bone health. And because we've stopped absorbing calcium in our mid-20s. So after that, when we think about our bones and like the potential for the leaching of calcium out, the weakening, how can we stop that process? How can we work against it? And it's resistance training. So diet is one component, making sure we're eating enough so we're not leaching the nutrients from our body, but also resistance training so that we're building that strength. So that goes to muscle, it goes to bone, mobility training to make sure that when we are older, that we can bend down and not feel concerned that something is going to ache a certain way, that something might move where it wasn't supposed to. So mobility training is so huge to make sure that we're moving properly how we should be and keeping everything limber enough. So those are some of the pieces. So when someone comes and they're saying that they've been doing cardio day in and day out and they're seeing no results, I'm like, well, we got a lot to talk about.
Yes.
We have a lot to talk about. I'm happy that you showed up so we can.
Yes,
So
it's like lean on in.
yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
So those
Wow.
conversations just become more important as we age.
Oh my goodness. And I think that individuals are a little more open to leaning in and really listening to that as we age. I almost feel like it's kind of a benefit, that wisdom that comes with age is real, and that we
Mhm.
can kind of see outside of just that one box of like just weight loss and look towards all these
Yeah.
other health benefits. You have a beautiful way of pulling in those topics and making them all make sense. So seriously, thank you so much for speaking over our community with movement, with nutrition, with decreasing stress. Like, I feel like we really hit a lot of the pillars of just good health. And so maybe we can end on that, like, again, back to that question of what do you hope individuals heard out of you? And this can be kind of a lump sum of just what you preach in general, but like if you could send the person out the door today with one thought, one actionable step towards that next better version of themselves, what would that look like?
Oh, yeah. I think where I want to leave that today is to start. I always love just wherever you want to be to start today. Whatever small increment, like we said, it could be that 10-minute walk outside in the morning. It could be setting your alarm 5 minutes earlier. It could be going to bed 10 minutes earlier. Setting just those small goals that can start today. Don't wait till Monday. Everyone wants to wait till Monday, but it can start today, finding your community, setting those small goals. All of that's going to get you to where you want to be tomorrow.
So good. And again, for our listeners going, where can I reach Chelsea? And you have a one-on-one call available, discovery call. Give our community all the places to find you.
Yes. So you can find me on Instagram, ADHD_dietitian. On there, there is a link and you can schedule that free discovery call with me. It's 100% no responsibility to you. Just hang out with me for about 45 minutes and we can talk all about what you're looking to do and if I'm the right direction to help you. So I would love to chat. Come check me out. And yeah, thank you so much for having me here today.
Thank you so much for coming back and just rounding out our whole ADHD series. And this is not goodbye. We're staying in touch. We'll bring you back on another time. Thank you again.
Awesome. Thank you so much.